This is the Outliers Edge podcast, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity by taking them to the edge of their comfort zone so that they can lead us to the edge of what's next. I'm your host, Niiamah Ashong. Let's do this. Hello. Niiamah Ashong here, founder of Outliers Edge, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. I'm smiling because as I say this here, I'm like, I just said this because we had started our conversation and we had gotten into the beginnings of it all, and then the recording just stopped. So now we're in like a round two version. I love to bring in these kinds of elements into our space because it's how life really is, right? Life is like, we can have a plan, you can even start executing on that plan, and then immediately something goes and changes. And to me, honestly, it gives space for when something like this happens. I like to think, what is the universe trying to say? What else might be here beyond just a small technical thing? I've never had an experience where like my recording just stopped in the middle, so given all that, I like to think like there was a whole introduction that I did. I felt good about that introduction. And now I'm like, now we're letting it go, right? And we're just gonna be here and be real. And I have an awesome person who is shaping humanity in her way here. It's Yasmin Vorajee. Yasmin, I am glad to be back in conversation and back in connection with you. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Niiamah, and it is so great to reconnect with you as well. Like, it has been a couple of 3 years now.
3 years now, yeah.
Since we met at the conference in London.
Yes.
And when I got your invitation to come and chat with you and everything, and I was like reflecting on our time at that conference, and I remember like what really struck out for me was because I remember we were doing like group work or something, and you turned to me and you asked me this question. And I think in that instance, I was so bowled over by your presence. And obviously you have like the most beautiful voice. And I just remember like this presence coming at me, and I was like, whoa. And in your introduction, the previous one, when you were talking about being in a room of, other leaders, and for me, you were just such a shining leader. Like, it wasn't a case of where you didn't know what you were doing. I just I think your certainty and your confidence just exuded from you. That's always what I remember about our first meeting.
Thank you about that. Let me receive that in. Thank you very much about that. Yeah, it was a special week. It was a special week in particular because not only was in another room full of leaders, but I had asked myself the question, how do I want to show up in this space? How do I want to like show up and actually be able to not kind of fade into the background, into like, this is how everyone is being, or this is what is expected of me. But if I like, let's actually bring this out and bring it out to life here. Let's play with this. I remember I actually I'll let you in on something here. I felt myself in the middle of that day, having a conversation. There was still a lot of people that were coming in doing like in the private mastermind like type experience, and I felt like my concentration is slipping. And this is one of the times where I knew I was really dialed in, because there's like no apologies in it. I'm like, I left the room, went to the bathroom, meditated again in there, and then like came back out. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. This is it. Now we're back in alignment. I appreciate that because I also was really excited when you said yes. And like it wasn't like the longest interaction, but it was like really powerful, right? And what I get about you is that like, you're someone who knows like what you're about. You're someone like you're willing to take risks. You're willing to like put things out into the world, but you do it in like a really, I like centered more than grounded. Like just like, because centered, you can play in any type of, and you can be in any sphere that works for you. But Yasmin, like I feel like in addition to, like, you're practical, you provide really insightful like approaches to things, and then you hold yourself in a manner that's in alignment to it. You're not about hyperbole, you're about like, this is what works and this is what's true, and like let me step into that and be a living example of that. It is. Nowadays, I get to spend more time with people who have like gotten themselves into alignment on that. But like, it was incredibly refreshing spending time with you and realizing like this is how you choose to be. Like you were on that train much earlier than most of the other people I had been experiencing at that time. And so I'm really like, I'm excited to see where that train has taken you in the last 3 years. I'm excited to be in space with you here. Thank you for being who you are. And I'm really like, I just get pumped for wherever this conversation goes.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot to me. So thank you. I received that gratefully.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to give some space. I shared who you are to me in this moment right now. I want to give some space for you to speak a bit about like who you are out in the world. It might be you personally, it might be you professionally. We have space for all of it here. But if we were going to get to know you a bit, like what would you like to share?
Sure. So my name is Yasmin. I'm from England. I'm from the UK, but I've lived in Ireland now for the last 21 years. So I think I've lived in Ireland longer than I've lived anywhere else. My husband is Irish and we have 3 young children. So they're 12, 9 and 6. And we have a puppy as well, which because we just got the baby off to school and then we thought, oh, let's give ourselves another challenge. So we got a puppy. So he's just 1 now. He's a rough collie, like the lassie dog. So, oh, he's adorable. And we live in Northwest Ireland. So about 2 hours northwest of Dublin. And for me, this is really the life that I've always wanted, where I'm a mom and I have a lovely home and I'm not saying that it's all perfect, but it's like it's that strong sense of contentment, like this is what I want. I get to talk to my kids as they get older as well. I get to talk to my kids and I get to see who they're becoming. Like my eldest is so funny because he loves politics, because I'm a bit of a politics animal myself, so we talk about politics all the time. But he's also turning into my mum because my mom watches YouTube videos for cooking inspiration. So my family are from India originally, so both my parents are Indian, and he now watches TikTok videos for food. And then he's like, we're gonna make this for dinner today. And I was like, oh my god, it's like looking at my mom. It's the funniest thing.
I love that because like there was an element here. I was like, oh yeah, like totally just you created your son. Like you're in a space where like we can talk politics and all that. And then you're like that, and he reminds me of my mom. I'm like, how did you create that? That's like brought that in too. That's cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, are you getting like really good food then now? Like, are you like?
Yeah, last week he made a pasta Alfredo. That was for the first time, and he did a nice job. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, this is because I love cooking, and we are a family of real foodies, and so we love cooking. I love talking about food. I love shopping for food. I love everything about food. So I was saying that, as you get, as you practice more and, you try different things, like I was saying to him, I said, next time add a little less garlic, more mushroom, like I said, so you'll learn how to get into your own groove of cooking. So he just made dinner this evening as well, and so he's like, I'm not so happy about that. And I was like, you did a great job. That was, for the first time, I was like, so for me, that everything that I do in my work is geared to having that quality of life. So I worked in corporate for 12 years, and then 10 years ago, I was made redundant from my job. And so I decided to start my own business. So I've been in business for myself for over a decade now. And it's funny because I feel like, there's part of me that's like thinking I should be further along than I am. And then there's other parts of me that's like, you know what? It is what it is. When I started the business, my eldest was only 15 months old. He's now he's going to be 12 in a week. And I had 2 more babies. I was like, you've been raising a family at the same time. And I think I want to be that person that says, listen, I'm not going to be the person that says, like, I just made so much money and it was so easy and I didn't even work for it. And you know what? Because I've worked really hard to learn my craft, to learn the skills and do all the things that I do. And no, it hasn't been easy. And I think that it just has to be said, because I think we have this idea that it's so easy to be this entrepreneur and, online entrepreneur. And I went, no, actually it's, yes, it can be, but it also cannot be as well.
Well, I really love that. Like, I want to explore a little bit here, because even the things that can be done like easily still takes a lot of work, right? Like I love to talk. It's easy for me to talk, but like I love how you said like I've been invested in my craft. You know, so, something to that point. Like I've always been a talker, but it's I've now gotten to the place where only now where I'm like, oh, I get it. There is a way that I could be in conversation with someone where no matter what happens, there's a space for some transformation. The probability of insight, of transformation of something can exist. But like that's taken a lot of work to get there. It's taken a lot of work to get there. And it hasn't been, it's like it's the easiest path for me, but it's not it's not easy overall.
Yeah.
And I feel that. I feel something to that extent there here. Like tell me a little bit, like there's a couple different things in what you said that I'm like, before we go any further, I just need to slow down on this here. Tell me a little bit about like how ease has worked for you, like the places where you do find ease in the work that you do, and then like how that compares with the macro journey of being an entrepreneur this last decade, and like easiness in that. So ease versus easiness.
I think for me, it's funny because I was watching this this woman that I follow on Instagram, and she was talking about how she started. And, you know, because I remember she was saying like, oh, my first year of business, I hit 6 figures and now I've made 7 figures and all this. And I was like, how did you do that? You know, I was like, and I was so interested. And then I got the backstory. And I'm looking for the backstory. I said, nobody starts from like, oh, I just did it and it was amazing. I said, because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, well, I used to do Facebook ads and I used to do this, that, and the other for 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs. And I went, there you go, that's what it is, you know. And so I remember starting my business, and this was in 2012, and I remember learning coding, learning how to create a landing page. When you think of all the tools that we have now, none of that existed. I was trying to get my head around this. I remember spending hours in the evening trying to build like simple web pages. And I just think, you know, like sometimes I'm talking to clients now and they're like, how do you know how to do all of these things? And I was like, I had to learn all of this stuff. And it was something that you said before that, you know, this journey of entrepreneurship, like it's just me in my business right now. Yeah, I've worked with VAs over the years. I said, but right now it's just me. So, you know, it's about having that sense of grace around it, and for myself to kind of say like stop expecting so much, because you know it's easy to compare yourself to somebody else when you realize it. And then it took me a long time to realize I thought they've got a whole machine behind them. You know, it's not just this girl next door persona, but there is a whole machine, and there ain't no machine behind me. It is, I am the machine. And so for me, what's been really interesting around that question about ease, when I show up, when I talk about what I'm passionate about, when I talk about what I've learned, one of my clients this morning, we were having a session and I was just like, I help a lot of my clients with marketing, their messaging, their strategy, like the words that they need to be able to put, like, so when they tell me what they're doing, I can reflect it back to them. And then they go, oh, and they're like madly trying to write it all down and record it and stuff. And she's like, you have a real gift for this, you know? And for me, I was like, that didn't come, like, that wasn't just there. That's been something that I've honed over a number of years. I said, but when I show up like that, I don't have an expectation that I'm gonna know, because I know that when I'm with clients and I'm like, oh, I need to deliver, and I put myself under that pressure to have all the answers, it doesn't work for me. And so now, like a few minutes before my client calls, I always just do a little prayer for myself. And I say, I want to be here. I want to be fully present so that whatever needs to come through me to them comes through. So I'm like a clear channel. And so sometimes, like, you know, they'll say to me, like, say that again. What did you just say? And I went, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't. There's like, yeah.
This is why we record.
Why we record.
Yeah.
No, I personally really appreciate that, right? Because this comes down to that element of presence. One of the things that you brought into the conversation earlier, like presence, how it's palpable, but then the actual impact of it for others. And I think this is a thing that's kind of, I don't know, I've found to be important around like expressing who you are, expressing something about putting something out into the world. There's an energetic like correlation that comes out. I personally tend to stick to video or audio because I'm like, there's so much energy that comes through. Like you are one of the few people in this, since I've started out this business here, that's experienced me like in person, you know, which is a whole other breadth of things, right? And what I'm hearing from you is like, it's like you do what it takes to like actually get yourself present into that moment so that whatever comes out is actually in alignment and is in fully like, to me, it's like the energetic transmission of it can come across such that it feels and is received as powerful.
Yeah.
It makes a difference.
It really does, because I love doing things like webinars and engagement events, like challenges and workshops, because for me, I see myself as a teacher. That's what and it's so funny because, you know, when you look back in your childhood, and my dad always tells the story to my kids of when I was little, like I wouldn't be little, but I would be kind of like, say, 11, 12, whatever. And I remember at the back of my door in my room, I would like pretend it was like a blackboard, like in the olden days when we had blackboards. And I was teaching, like nobody was there. They were my, invisible class of like just teaching them. And I said to my son, I said, nothing much has changed because I sit here in this room and I teach. I said, this is what I love to do. And I think that, one of the things that I've recently kind of discovered is human design. I don't know whether you're familiar with this, Niiamah. Are you familiar with human design?
Yes, I am.
So my profile is as a generator. Okay. So it's about the energy, and my job is to show up and just do what I love and to follow my joy. And it's so interesting that when I look back on the decade and I think, there's been great successes, but then there's also been times where I'll be like, what the heck am I doing? This is not working. What am I doing? And I think what has always been really clear to me is that when I do things out of the joy of them, I get great results. Like, if I do an online strategy day and I've got like, say, 10 people in that room, I can make sales so easily because I've connected with people. And that for me is like the true power of, like, for me, I love connecting with people. And when I put myself in positions where I don't get that opportunity to connect, then that feels like, oh, this feels so much harder than it needs to be, or that it just feels like there's more resistance. And so that's really one of the things that I've learned is you've got to follow your joy. You've got to follow what's really going to make me happy. And one of the big things is being about detaching from the outcome. So if I said like, okay, I'm going to do a webinar this month and I want to get 5 new one-on-one clients. And I remember saying this to a mentor of mine that, in my head, I was like, well, if I do this workshop and it's only $50, like if I don't sell many, then I'm not going to make that much money. And she was like, yeah, but just the act of putting it out there, just the act of marketing and sharing, those one-on-one clients could come from completely different avenues.
Yes.
Than what you expect. And it was like a light bulb moment for me, because I went, oh, there you go. I was so attached to how they would come that I wasn't open to the possibility of all the different ways that they could come to me. In my head, it was just one path.
Yeah. And that's really, it's interesting to me here, because so there's a few different things that are coming on. I love it. The one part here is like, one of your superpowers is your presence, and you get that. You like, your presence has also come with it like accumulated experiences so that you can be in the moment and deliver for whatever's happening in that presence, right? I'm hearing that. I'm also hearing another one of your superpowers is like the way that you connect with people, right? There were hundreds of people at that conference. I remember you, and I remember, and that is spun over the years. So your the power of your connection and when you're connected to people also really, really comes through. And if I'm when you're talking, there's a part of me that's like, that just wants to like, I want to riff with you a bit, you know, cause I'm like, cause you're like, I am the machine. I'm like, oh, I'm building the machine right now. And it's super interesting because that last component around like, you don't really know where the one-on-one client's going to come. You don't know where the client's going to come from. That has been one of the biggest, like, it's not even aha. It's just been one of like the biggest, like most freeing things. It also freaks me out at times where I'm just like, no, I want to get a client. Like, I know what, like, I love this here. This is like, I want to see upward trajectory. I don't want to see up and down. I don't want to see like flatlining. I want to see up and then it's up. I just want to see this thing keep growing and know, right? Like, like, that would just be really great, you know? But there's something in there around like the freedom that comes into it where it's like, wait a minute, if I can get out of my own way, and rather than trying to construct and perfectly like reverse engineer the perfect process, and instead I'm just out in the world doing what I do, giving people a chance to see it. Maybe the person who comes won't ever show up. I just like, my Instagram has a lot of videos of me right now. And like, I'm like, I really think I want the person who's not watching the videos, but who sees that I'm relentless with showing up, and they're like, I want to be relentless in what I'm doing. Whatever it is, like, I don't need to watch your videos, but you have presence right now. You're making sure that people know that you're here. That really excites me. Like I'm like,
and I think that's
tell me more about
powerful. I think that's so powerful because, and I say this all the time to my clients, you know, I was like saying, so when was the last time that you shared your message? Because that's essentially what marketing is. And they were like, well, you know, I started writing a post, but, you know, it wasn't right. And, you know, and I'd be like, okay, you've got to get it out there. I said, you know, there's this woman that I follow on Instagram. And she does this thing where she has like this challenge where she says, you've just got to write every single day for 30 days. And I don't care if it's complete and utter rubbish, but it's the principle behind it is so powerful because, like, you know what, not everything is going to like hit a note with everybody, and you're going to have like dud posts, nobody pays any attention, and there'll be other things that will just hit and resonate with them. But you're never going to get there if you're not willing to have the crud, you know, to have the bad stuff. And you know, and like, I remember one of my clients said to me, she's like, well, you know, nobody engaged with it, nobody liked it, nobody commented. And I said, that's not why you're doing it though. You're not doing it for the comments. You're not doing it for the likes. And I remember a mentor said to me, you know, like, well, look at who's commenting and look at how many likes you're getting. I said, no. That's not why I'm doing this, because I know there are lurkers, because I'm a lurker as well. You know, I'll hover around and look at what people are doing, but you'll never know that I was there. Right. So, and I think that's so important. And as, you know, we talk about outliers, like, I think we're here to say what we want to say, and the people who resonate with that will just connect with that. I don't want to be here saying, okay, so my audience want this from me, so I'll give them that, because that's not me. I'm just, you know, it's what we were saying before. It's like, it's a persona. That's not me.
And I think like there's something about it where it's like, look, seen as you are an outlier, you know, like, there's a certain path for you, like, and I think that's it. Like, for other people, it makes sense. Like, like, you can totally do that if your path was the norm, and you're like on like the norm path, and you've done things that have gotten, like, you know, in my mind, I look at like, oh, this is what the average person does. Great, you know, this is what the best practices of that specific construct works. Great, but not many people have had grew up in the UK, moved to Ireland, like had this experience, like they're not you, you know, they're just not you.
They're just not me. And even when I look back over my life, like, I'm 44 now, like I'm the youngest of three. And my brother and sister both stayed at home to go to university, you know, like they stayed in our hometown. My dad was like, you know, it's be much cheaper and all the rest of it. And I was just like, no, I'm going to leave. I want to leave and go away. And, you know, and that wasn't really the done thing. You know, in our culture, in our community, it was like women only left to get married, not to leave home and be, you know, live by themselves. That was kind of like not really, you know, that was kind of, people would go, oh, my daughter won't leave home, you know, it was like this big pride thing. So I made that decision to leave and go to university. and all the things I've ever done. Like I married my husband, he's Catholic, I'm Muslim, that was a big thing. And so for me, I've always made the choices that are right for me, even though they've never been easy choices. I mean, my husband was an easy choice, but like the whole, everything that you have to do to get to that point, to get people to listen to you and what you want. And so it's so funny because as you were saying that, and I was like thinking, there's been so many times where I've tried to fit myself into a box. And then you go, you're not meant to be in a box. You're meant to just do whatever you want to do and stop trying to conform to, especially in online marketing, like what the bro marketers talk about, and, all these different viewpoints that people have about how you do business. And if you're not making this much money, then you're not a success. And I'm just like, you know what? I don't have time for that, because we're all so different and we all have something so unique to bring to this world. And if we were all thinking the same, if we were all doing the same, like, where's the fun in that?
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, I think we're living it. Where's the fun of it? Like, I think that's like the answer is, like, we have a lot of people who put a lot of effort to try and get people to do things how they've done it, missing out on the magic of the person that's in front of them, and how they've done it is to do it how someone else has done it, with their own name and a TM at the end of it, and all that comes out from like the same principles, like online marketing. I'm like, it's all Robert Cialdini, like it's all persuasion. Just read that book. There's people who put it into life in many different ways, but like, that's it. Like, it's just that, like those are the principles on which everything else has been built, Now, there've been people who have found different ways to leverage those principles for them at the time that was right, based on what they had as their assets. I love how you talked about like the backstory, like really like listen to the backstory here. It's like how did they come? Well, I was actually working, my first clients were actually in this organization. It was a and it led to this one other client. And then someone pulled me in to like be on their platform. And then since then I'm like, okay, got you.
Because there's a woman who I remember watching a master class of hers, and she's big on YouTube. And she was talking about like, well, I got this many subscribers, and if I can do it, you can do it. And I was like, tell me the backstory. I need to know the backstory. So I went looking for the backstory. And she was approached by HubSpot to do a talk. And I was like, okay, so you've got to be a pretty big name for a company like HubSpot, because they're pretty big in like the CRM world, the online marketing, whatever that is they do. And I was just like thinking, okay, I always want to know the backstory. I said, because it's a bit like, even with entrepreneurs when they're like, oh, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. And I went, no, you didn't. What was going on behind that, And even like now when I look at my kids, and I think that all the things that I talk to them about, my husband talks to them about, and I think, God, I wish I'd known this when I was a kid. But I only have to look back to my grandmothers and to see where they went with their lives. So like my grandfather, my father's father, came to England in the 60s, and my dad was only 14 years old, and they came from India because there was no opportunity there, and they wanted, and they all worked in the factories, in the cotton factories of Lancashire, and then my mum came over to get married in the early 70s, and like they built this life. And I said, there is no way I would be where I am right now if they hadn't done everything that they did. I said, so I am standing on the shoulders of giants. I said, there's no self-made about me or anything like that. I said, because it was their sacrifices. It was all the stuff that they did that's allowed me to be able to be here. And now I can do more for my kids, And so backstory is so important. You got to know what the backstory is, because otherwise it leads to that sense of comparisonitis, because you think, well, they're so much younger than I am and I'm only here. And you think, okay, where did they start? What do they have? And like most of the people that I see who are very young, like say like in their 20s, like I'm in my 40s, when they're in their 20s and they're like, oh, I've made so much money in my business. And I said, you started in, online world at a time where it was like completely, it was just burgeoning. Like, you didn't have all of the like the tech issues or anything, because you had so many tools and you had social media and, you know, all of these things were just blossoming at the time. I said, so, you know, you're riding a wave. You're riding a wave that wasn't entirely of your making either. Oh, you're on mute. Oh. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay, so I've unmuted myself, and then I talked about how awesome what I said was while I was muted, but that was also muted. So none of that is ready. Like, again, like I'm paying attention to what's happening. It's just like the world does not need that right now. Look, what comes to me is like a thought of like something my mentor says, and he says, people often compare how they feel on the inside with how others look on the outside, right? And I think that like as I'm hearing this here, like that to me feels like one of like one of the things that's at play. And if I'm hearing from you, I almost feel like you have one of your tools to be able to get out of that comparison. Like, oh, I'm feeling like this. You said earlier, like I part of me feels like I should be further along. I raised my hand to that because like it's hard for me to actually say that out loud. It's very hard for me to say that out loud. I'm like I've seen successes. A part of me is like I should be seeing way more, you know. And then, but there's just this area of like I should be seeing way more because I am thinking about, I know what my business actually is like. I know what my family situation is like. I know what I'm doing that is courageous, and I know what I'm doing that other people think is a big deal. And I'm like, that was me sick, and I just felt like doing it for funsies, you know, because that's all I could muster up, you know. And so when I hear you talk about the backstory, I feel like it's like a really like a great tool to be able to look at it and be able to remove yourself and give yourself a chance to say like, wait a minute, let's actually like, this is what they may look like, but like let's see what's actually happening, what like how do they like what's actually here, and let's look apples to apples. Let's remove ourselves, or if we're really there, and you talked about non-attachment, like being able to not be attached to their story at all and be like, great, I'm super happy for you, I'm on my journey. You know?
Exactly. Because I think, you know, even when people have said like, you know, well, I made this much money and it was so easy. And what I'm really interested with the backstory is, you know, what level of support did they already have? Like, and Tim Ferriss talks about this as well, that, you know, when he was talking about the 4-hour week, and he's like saying, I didn't need any of that stuff to make me money, because he already had like investments and things like that were already giving this income. And, you know, some of the people that I hear talking, and there was, you know, there's been people where they're like saying, well, you know, I hit 6 figures really quickly. And I say, but did you have financial support to get you to that point? Whereas I know when I started, like I was made redundant. I was like, I had to make money. And so that was a pressing need. And the truth is that when you have to make money in your business, you know, and this is why I always say to people, like, you know, if you've got a part-time job or if you've got a job, like, you know, do this as a side hustle because it takes the pressure off you. That wasn't a possibility for me. But when you are, you know, when you're in business and you're trying to make money to, you know, make sure that you've got a home, you've got a roof over your head and food in the fridge and all the rest of it, then, you know, you do make different decisions. And, you know, and when I give myself that hard time of like, you should be further along. And I said, you did the very best that you could with what you had, with what you knew at that moment. Because 2 months after I started my business, I had my first miscarriage. I said, so there was so many things that have gone on for you. And it's like, you cannot beat yourself up about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You know, like, first, like my thoughts right now are like, and I say it to you, but I recognize that as I'm saying it to you, I think I'm also saying it to myself here, which is like, we are much further along than we're giving ourselves credit. Right. And I think it's that what I hear from you is like almost like taking the full account. You know, I used to work as in rewards consultant. You know, I was doing retirement actuarial work, but the group that I was in at the time was called Total Rewards. And one of the things that I came into my entire career thinking was that, you know, your rewards as an employee is not just the compensation. A lot of people focus on salary, right? But it's like, if it's your health benefits with it, it's the retirement that's there, it's the the perks and the time off and so on and so forth. Like, how does the whole thing come together? Because some people get paid a lot of money, but then they have to spend a lot of money in order to get the same kinds of like resources or support that's there, right? And so while you're talking, like what's coming into my mind, it's like, oh no, like given the circumstances of your life, you're tremendously far, you know, given the priorities of your life, you're tremendously, it's just harder when it looks at like, oh, wait, you didn't have like, like, I don't know, I'll say this right now, like I have a child now, right? And I'm like, oh, this game is very different. What was I doing? What was I doing for the years before I had a kid? Like whatever I thought was work, I was like, I was not doing it. I was partying and I was having a good time, and I was like, look at this, you know. But like I'm like, it's different. It's different. So, but the part of me that's like really just feeling that space of like, and I say this for me as well, where it's like, actually, to tell you the truth, like you're like, you have come quite a bit. And I love the idea of like an exponential curve, like grows, especially a logarithmic one, like it grows differently. It might look like you're going flat when everyone else is like climbing up. But when the uptick happens, it happens in such a like it's so hard to keep up with. And that's right now, that's what's flowing through me in this moment.
It's like George Clooney always said that, you know, when he got really big in the ER, and everyone kept talking about him being this overnight success, and he's like, I've been an overnight success for the last 20 years, you know, I've been doing this, and like that, you know, the exponential curve, like suddenly he's ER and then pew, that's it, you know, he's like superstar status, you know, and but nobody saw all the other stuff when he was in, was it General Hospital or whatever soap opera he was in.
I love that, right? And that's the thing, I think that's the thing that really gets me excited, because even when I'm a success, I'm like, oh, like, well, let me say this, let me rephrase that. So even when I'm a success, it implies there's an element that's like, oh, I'm not there yet. And that's not it. I think that's the thing. Like, I'm already incredibly successful. My parents came from Ghana, West Africa. We moved to a place like outside of Camden, New Jersey. I was the firstborn of 3 out there. Like, there's so many things in my journey where I generally look at it and say, I'm not supposed to be here, you know, and yet I am. And then on top of that, then like the comparison game comes on, and like, really, we just don't have the room for that. We don't have the room for that. One of the things I do want to, we're going to start wrapping up our conversation here, but like one of the things I like to call out is like the element of both the present, and I just really, I got tickled when you were talking about, you just don't know how one effort that you put out into the world right now might lead to a client, like might lead to your goal, but just not in the way that you expected it. Is there like a story or a moment or something that comes to mind of like, you know, a client that came to you where just like, I don't even know where this is. I knew someone who put a message in a bottle one day and threw it into an ocean. 4 years later, someone came and said, hey, I got your message in a bottle. And so I called, you know, like, all right. I would be curious if there's like anything outrageous or anything that like just unexpected that's come your way.
Well, to be truthful, like it's so funny because I live in a small town. There's about 4,500 people in this town, and I worked in we had this corporate headquarters here, and we had about 1,100 people working in the building at the time at its height. And I was in the training and HR department, so I pretty much saw everybody that would be coming in, and you know, I would do the new people orientation program and all that. So it's so funny now because even like it's been 21 years since we opened up. And even now when me and the kids are out in town, people say hello to me all the time. Like I've been here, like I'm like a part of the town, and people say, hi, Yasmin, hi, Yasmin, hi, Yasmin. And the kids always look at me and say, who's that? Who's that? And I said, I used to work with them at the company. And so now they're like, I bet you worked with them, didn't you? And I said, yeah. And I said, because, and I will remember a lot of their names. And I said, because they like, I was one of the first people. And I said, but this was a really important thing for me, is that I want every interaction that I have with whoever it is to be a positive interaction. I said, because you never burn your bridges. You never be that Egypt that, you know, then to people turn around and go, oh gosh, I wouldn't want to do any business with them or anything like that. So for me, that's always really important, that from a connection perspective, and I don't even do this consciously. This is very much an unconscious thing, that I want people to walk away from having a really positive interaction with me, whether it's just me picking up something that they've dropped on the ground and I just give it to them. And a few months ago, I went to a networking event, and I just went along to kind of go, listen, especially after the pandemic and everything, there were very few in-person events. So this was one of the first things that were kind of coming back online or in person. And the speaker was somebody that I'd met through being a part of the Professional Speaking Association, which I've been a member since 2014. So I knew her through that. So she was the keynote speaker. So I was like, oh, it's great. So I was chatting with her. I went to say hello and she was like, oh, Yasmin, it's been so long. We ended up having this chat. And she was like, oh, I didn't know that you'd written a book. So I went and got her a copy of my book. And I said, here's him. And she was trying to give me money. And I was like, no, it's my gift to you. And then through the conversation, she said to me, would you deliver training for us, for our company? And it just opened up another opportunity, right? And what I loved about that, I said to my husband, I said, I had no expectation, didn't even know that that's something that they would be looking for. And I just went, an opportunity opened up just from a relationship that I had. And for me, that is so, so important, because all of the clients, pretty much all the clients that I ever get, I never know where they've come from. And I was actually just doing a sales call today. And I was chatting to the lady, and we were chatting, and she was like, well, you said this. And she said, I'm really sorry. She said, I keep saying that you said this and you said this because this was our first time of actually having a conversation. She says, I watch all your videos. And so it feels like I know you, and it feels like we've had this conversation already. So I was just like, no, that's great. That's really, really good, because me putting my stuff out there, me sharing my message and not knowing where the clients are going to come from, that's been probably one of my biggest lessons, is to release the needing to know where they're going to come from. Because when my grandmother died in 2019, I went home just before she passed. I made it home about an hour before she passed away. But the house was full of people, all these people that, oh my God, the amount of people that came to pay their respects. And I had so many of my cousins come to me, like distant cousins, and they're like, oh, I watch your videos. I find them really great. And part of me was like cringing, because like, oh, you're watching me. And they were like, oh, I find them really useful. I would never know that. And so I think my duty, my job, especially as a generator, especially when I think about my human design and just my own purpose, I want to be here, say what's true for me, say what I think is important, share that, and then let's just see what happens.
Yeah, it feels really good. Like I appreciate you bring that into the space. I appreciate you bringing like the intention. It's not that you're not doing things. It's not that you're not putting things out into the world. It's not that you're even not being intentional. Like you're like, you have your platforms. That you're doing the web. You have things going on, but like how you're being, or who you're being in it, is not attached to. You're not holding on to anything in particular. Like this message is going to go out there. And I love what you said here earlier in the conversation about like the lurkers. I've been having like I have someone that I know that's like, look, I'm a champion lurker. Like, and they started telling me all the ways that they lurk, and they're like, and then I do this, I take it back so no one sees it. Like, I think it really gets to like, you just never know who's paying attention.
You don't know.
You just don't know. And one of my things it's been really big. Like I'll record everything. I started out this conversation with like something going on with the recording. And I decided to take it in a different direction. And I'm like, to some people that they're gonna watch it and be like, oh, that's not my thing. Like, why do you do that? And to someone else, you're gonna be like, you can do that. Like, yeah. And that's it, to like to recognize. For me, it's like to recognize that whatever, the fact that you showed up is important. The fact that you showed up for someone, it's going to have the value that it needs to be. You are that person's person. Like I watch all your videos. It's as if I know you. It's like we haven't talked before, but I already talked. That person's the relationship has already been built.
Yeah.
And I think this is what this is the stuff that gets me, where I'm like, I look at it, I'm like, oh, this is the principle behind it. This is why we do the Instagram or the YouTube or whatever it is. It's why I invite people onto a podcast. It's like, but just being in relationship. And sometimes you might meet someone sometimes you might meet someone who's looking for something, or you might be in a place where like the right things line up and something opens up. Yeah. Or there may be a person that goes out and talks about you over like dinner and drinks because someone said something that made them think about you.
Yeah.
Like, but the game is you've been in the game. I really see that, and I respect you for that. So let's do this, Yasmin. Like, we're at time. So what I'd love to do is I'd love to do two things. I'd love to give like, can you let us know if anyone wants to go deeper down the journey with you? If people like want to continue the conversation with you, what's the best way for them to do that? And you can let us know some of the things that you're up to if that helps them
Sure.
also know like where.
Yeah, so you can absolutely visit my website, which is yasminvorajee.com. I know my name is a little bit unusual, so if you search for Tiny Time Big Results, this is my book, and when you go looking on Tiny Time Big Results, you'll find me. I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, and LinkedIn. They're kind of like the main ones that I hang out on. And if you go onto the website, I have a great guide. It's called The Fastest Path to Cash in a 20-hour week business. That kind of gives you an insight into how you can have a profitable business in 20 hours a week or less. And come over and just join me on Instagram and just chill out and, watch my stories and, see what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
And you can get the book on Amazon, just let you know.
Perfect.
You can get the book on
Tiny
Amazon.
Time Big Results. You can
Tiny
get the
Time
book
Big
on
Results.
Amazon. Perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
So the other question I have for you here is like how I like to wrap up our conversations. Typically people will say, hey, like what's a message you would have had for your past self? I'm not interested in your past self. You can't go back to the past, right? But there will be a future you. And so my question here is like, what's the message you want to leave in this moment? And this is just for you, like for your future you, that you can come back here in 5-10 years and like hear the thing that you most need to hear at that time. What would that be?
I think for me, it's such a great question, Niiamah. I think for me, the place that I've always got stuck is when I want to follow my joy. I want to follow what I feel called to do, but then I kind of go, no. Everyone else knows more than you. You should trust what they say you should do, and then go down that route. And I think that is the message that I would say to myself every day, is to really tune in and to really follow my gut. And especially as a generator, and just the way that I am, is I will get that fizzle of excitement, and I need to just sit with that and just think, okay, where is that taking me? And I think that for me, it's self-trust is probably the biggest thing, because there have been times where I haven't trusted myself or haven't trusted my instincts, and I know that they're the times when I kind of go, could have gone a different way. And so I think that for me would be the biggest thing, is that if I can trust in myself, trust in what I'm feeling, instead of looking for that validation. And that has been a big part of my journey when I was talking about like detaching from the outcome, is I don't need to have all the answers. I just need to know what the next step is going to be. And that's something that I share a lot with my kids, is, when they're talking about the future or whatever it might be. And I said, but if you look after this moment, then the next moment was taken care of, and then the next moment is taken care of. And self-trust is that piece where you kind of go, I trust that I know what I'm doing right now. And, something that we said before about you do the best that you can with what you've got, what you know. And if I was to go back like 10 years and I look back and I think I'm such a different person. So there's no way that I could have taken my lessons from now and put them in from there, because I'm a completely different person, not completely, but like I am just, there's been so much growth.
Absolutely. So like, let's do this. Let's leave that there, because that is actually for you, right? Yeah. That is a message for you there. Yasmin, I'm glad that we're back in connection here. I get excited for what comes out. Thank you for standing for what you stand for. Thank you for being out there and helping people like create like revenue streams and impacting the world from like this 20 hours a week here. Like, and thank you for like knowing that it's real for you and living that realness on a regular basis. It's refreshing. It's important. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
We're just getting started. Take 10 seconds to think about your greatest insight from today's conversation. And if you're ready to go and bring this to a deeper, more applicable level for you, come and join us in an upcoming masterclass. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass to be coached live and to bring your aspirations, your goals, and your challenges and have them handled in real time. This is high flame, high impact, high transformation. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass and come experience your next level of leadership.